Okay.
We're recording.
Good afternoon and welcome to Sandwich.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I would like to open this interview by asking the school committee members to introduce themselves.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon, Jim Dever.
Sean Roush.
Beth Cummings.
Jim Grail.
Jay.
Stephanie Miles. Nancy Crossman. And we have one member, Carrie Ames, who was unable to attend and she'll be watching at a later date.
Perfect.
So as we've shared with you earlier this week, our format today consists of 3 parts. Your opening statement, which could be 4 to 5 minutes. 17 prepared questions, which we'd ask you to give it about 2 or 3 minutes each. And then your closing comments, where you can also ask us questions of
But maybe in year 17, it might get answered, so let's see what happens.
All right, so we'd like to thank you in advance for your participation and continue with your opening statement.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. You've seen the resume. I've been, throughout my career, I think, pretty strategic in a sense of how I've progressed. I started as a classroom teacher, assistant principal, and the next move that I made was a somewhat strategic one, because in my entire career, as a teacher and a principal, I've done curriculum up the kazoo. You know, you've done a ton of that. But what I didn't have was that HR side, which is what so much of a superintendent is. And so I was strategic in that sense of what I did, but it also played into my personality pretty well. What blows my mind is that I've been doing that in my 8th year in Plymouth. The time is just flying by, but it's been phenomenal. And one of the things that I've been lucky enough to do, which I think I relayed in the letter, is we're a large district in Plymouth, and so we have a number of different people in different roles. And I work with a superintendent who has been fantastic, and as I've grown into the position, given me much more responsibility in the sense though. So how do I tie that into a superintendent's role is I do all negotiating. We have 9 different bargaining units. So in 8 years I've negotiated 27 different contracts. Feels like we're constantly negotiating, but it's been an experience that I didn't have necessarily as a principal. And what most superintendents do. I do all of our all personnel, obviously. I meet every new teacher that walks in the district. I do all of our legal. So when we have a situation where a teacher might do something inappropriately, I'm their first line of contact with the principal. So I have what so many superintendents have to do on a day-to-day basis in a smaller district, and that was strategic on my end because that gave me that opportunity. And now I'm at the stage that I'm ready to take that next step. But again, you have to know my personality, very strategic in that. I'm not just running around applying for anything. I don't want to do that. I've got a very good position where I am, so I want to choose something that I think matches me and the district both ways. And I think that's important to me. I was just if you Google, I was just a finalist in a position that I lost to an interim. It happens, all right? But it was also a district that I felt was a good match for me. And that's it. That's the only other one I've applied for this year. So I'm not doing that. And this one. So then, the question is, why Sandwich? Why now? It's an interim position. And I think the key is for me is a long time ago. I've been on the Cape for a long time, and I had always said there were 2 districts that I wanted to be in on the Cape just because of their reputation and what they're doing. One was Falmouth, one was Sandwich. Years ago you had an opening, but I wasn't ready. Not that I would have gotten it, but I wasn't ready, and that was important, so it didn't even cross my mind at that time. I said, time will come, and if the time is right, then we'll do it. Falmouth went to an interim. And so I had been watching your school committee meetings. I knew that you guys were back and forth on whether you wanted to do a full search, whether you wanted to do an interim. And the timing makes sense, obviously, to do an interim. I understand that fully. But then the decision was, it's a 1-year interim. Are you ready to do this and make that kind of a commitment? And I thought, where I am in my career, if I didn't do it now, it might not happen again. And so that was important for me, especially where you left open the door to potentially apply for the job. Yeah, I know some districts don't do that. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I know you guys are if I was sitting in the teacher's position, it's a very, what's going to happen, really? Because anytime you bring in an interim, it's tough for teachers because they don't know exactly what to expect. They don't know if that person's going to be there long term, and that's always a thing. So I think what I would bring to the table in that situation is a calming personality. That's just, if you read the letters, you'll do some homework, obviously, and checking some references. That's kind of who I am. I'm not into, you have a 1-year position. Does the option to apply further intrigue me? Of course it does. There's no question about that. I wouldn't be here if it didn't. But what I know is that in working with you all is that that's a one-year position. So the job isn't to come in and rock their world. How do you find that balance for the teacher to say, okay, I'm not going to rock your world right now, but I also have to work with you all. I know you're dealing with budgets. I know you're dealing with student retention, where are students leaving and what they're doing. I know you're doing some research on that. As I did my research, I know you have a move from a superintendent's office, so that's all stuff, but you can hide that from the teachers. They don't need to be part of that. But getting them to understand that I'm there to support them for this year and what that means. So that's kind of where I come from and kind of my thoughts as the rationale behind this for me. And then you guys can make your decisions. But I hope during the course of the 17 questions I'll be able to answer a lot of that. And then if not, we can kind of go forward with that.
I forgot to tell you that Mr. Dever is going to be timing you.
It was right on the nose.
Yes. He'll move his
And I'll put the
discreetly when you get the books.
Although you kind of answered my first question, I believe.
So now you want to ask your other?
Well, my first question, maybe just expand for a bit, was why did you apply for this position? Just kind of hear some points.
Yeah. This has been a position, you guys are a high-performing district, have been for a long time. You're a very good community. I've known that for a long time. I mean, I was joking with a couple of your staff members that I coached for a long time when I was at my years of Whitman Hanson. I've been in this building, I can't even tell you how many times. So I know the area very well, and I know a number of your staff, and I think that's important. So again, when I'm being picky on where I'm looking, this was always an option for me, as long as the timing was going to be right. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
What would you identify as the biggest challenge facing the Sandwich Public Schools, and how would you address that challenge?
Like I said earlier, Sean, I think there's two parts of it. The first one, biggest one, it sounds like, and it's like this everywhere, is the budget. You're dealing with that, but I think piggybacked with that is this student retention. It's not necessarily a vocational program. You guys have always sent kids to the vocational, we understand that. But we know the charter school movement is out there, and you're losing some kids to charter school. So I think, how do we, as a district, determine what that is? And I'm sure you've been doing some work with that, but one of the first things that I would sit and figure out is to do some kind of an exit survey with parents is, why are you choosing? Is it just that you feel that that program is better for you, or are we missing something is something lacking here in Sandwich that you would want to address? I think that's a huge thing. I think you need to get, because if you know a child is, whether you like them or not like them, it doesn't matter. The money is leaving with them, and that is huge. And that's a big issue affecting, I work in Plymouth, we have one right in our own town, and it is crippling. We've been working desperately hard. I was very proud yesterday, I did a budget meeting with one of our elementary schools, and for the first time since I can ever remember, they didn't even have one kid apply to go to the charter school. That to me is progress. It's a baby step, but it's progress. And I think that's the kind of mentality, again, you're not knocking the other place, it has nothing to do with that, but it's losing money for you. And so your budget would be a huge thing, I think, it sounds like.
My question is, have you been responsible for creating, explaining, and defending a school budget to a school committee, a finance committee, and a board of selectmen?
Sure, very much a part of it. As a high school principal, obviously, I've done it in a smaller capacity in the scheme of the big district, but I've had to do that many times. And as in the role that I'm in now, I work hand in hand. Again, we're very large, but we have people that have different roles. We have a business manager. He and I actually work very closely together, particularly because of the negotiating, obviously. But we're constantly together as a team working on the budget. We defend it to the school committee, we defend it to FinCom. We actually do, we had started, when we started as a team in Plymouth, what we call kind of a budget roadshow. And we go to every one of our buildings, we explain our budget, line by line, what it is we're doing. I think our staff needs to know that, so that when they're in the community, a number of their staff live in town. They need to be able to talk to their neighbors and say, why are they doing what they're doing? And I think that's hugely important. So that, yeah, a number of them, it's my 8th year, so we've done it frequently. We just got full-day kindergarten passed in Plymouth, which is a huge feat. If you've been watching Plymouth, there's some pipe issues going on too. It's a $50 million hit, but they did that and still passed full-day kindergarten. So we've worked intimately with our committees doing that.
Tell us about your approach to developing a budget.
I think you start from, my philosophy is, and I think a lot of, especially where I'm at now, I think we start at the building level. What is it you need? if you start with a level service budget in a sense, let's say, where are you, what do you need? I've always been, and part of, as a principal, I was like this too. Let's start with where you are. What do you need or don't need from that? You know, for example, if they instituted a program that was a textbook adoption for that they might not need the next year, so we can take that off. You know, but that starts as your base. Where are you? And then you meet around what is it that you're looking for? Can that fit in the budget? Can it not fit in the budget? Is it a priority of us? We prioritize frequently where we're at. So we have 13 buildings, so 13 principals will come in, and they make a determination. You know, every principal wants this, wants that, and we determine where that priorities are for those. But if you start at the zero-based in a sense and build up, then that gives you at least some flexibility in that. And then you determine where the priorities are. I think that's hugely important. I've also done in the role I'm in, I started probably about 6 years ago, what I call a personnel audit. So every year there's a program out there, very simple, free one. You can tweak it to suit the needs of your constituents. But I do a personnel audit that analyzes every single year based on the population, what each building has. So do we need to move people from one building to another? Do we move people from one school to another? At what levels, sorry. And that has helped us hugely because we've done a lot of movement from it. Every single bit has been through attrition. We haven't laid off a person, but we've added a ton of positions. Because using that attrition, I can use that model and say, you know, you don't need this fourth grade teacher, but you're trying to add school psych really is a lot of what adjustment counselors have been huge lately. And so we've added those things based on the numbers. So it's a long-winded answer to a lot of different facets of a budget, as you know.
Complicated question.
It very much is, very much.
We know all of our questions could have one answer.
Yeah. Now I got the timer here. So
How would you create support for our school budget within the town of Sandwich?
Sure. Okay. I think communication. I think, you know, again, the simple thing of, like we said, is a very simple thing of going around to the buildings and explaining your budget to the buildings so that the staff understands. But you take that to the bigger level. I think it's communication is huge. Anything that is a change, people need to know and know why. We know rationally, educationally why it's important, but the fact of the matter is the layperson on the town that's just going to have a tax increase doesn't know or care until you have them understand why. So I think that's the big piece. You know, again, we'll use our kindergarten. I can't tell you how many meetings we had with the community about why this was important. Now, again, they still had to vote on it, and they had to decide, but we made our case to a number of different constituents around the town, and it ended up going unanimous. There was no questions asked, which I think is huge. So I think I'm a communicator. I think that is huge. I over-communicate sometimes, but I think it's better that people have that information, and then they can decide what to do with it. Does that make sense?
How do you perceive or define the role of superintendent and that of the school committee in terms of governance of the district?
Well, I think partners. I mean, clearly your role. You know, they say the role of a school committee is hire and fire superintendent, budget, policy. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? It's not, and we know that. So I think, but on the other side, the superintendent is the face to the teachers, right? That's who they are. So I think, in a sense, in a simplistic look at it, is to me the superintendent is the middle person between all of that. You have a job to do. You are elected to do your jobs. You have a fiscal responsibility, certainly to the taxpayers in town. And there are people on your staff that don't live in town, so they don't care about that. That's not their function. They care about their own town. So the job of the superintendent is to kind of, how do you marry those two and make sure that I get your message to the staff, but that you're also hearing their feelings and messages and where they're coming from, whether it be the building principal, the teachers, etc. So I think there's that relationship you can have that is seamless, really. But I think it starts with us forming that relationship. I mean, I think a year is a short time to do it in a sense, but I think I have an entry plan. I think, and one of the things that I talk about is doing some individual meetings with you guys, because I think it's important that we get to know each other. There has to be a level of trust built, and you have to work at that. It doesn't come easy, but you have to work at it. Because right now we don't know each other from a hole in the wall, right? So you need to spend the time getting to know each other. And I think once you do that, then the level of trust goes up. I've been in Plymouth with my exact same team for this is my 8th year. Trust has happened. It took some time, but it happens, and I think that's important. But that's, to me, that relationship, it's like an amoeba. It really is. There's no fine line to it, because you all are also community members. You probably know some of these teachers way better than I will, and that's important to know, too. Make sense?
Thank you.
In your style, do you see yourself more of surround yourself with good people, give them the tools they need to succeed and kind of step back, or are you a more hands-on, detail-orientated
Yes.
approach? Or both?
Kind of both. This is what I mean by that, Jim. Do I have every intention always of surrounding myself with good people? Absolutely. I've always viewed, as an administrator, my role is I sit with all of my administrators who I work with and ask what their goals are. So, for example, one of my second principal's job I took, I actually beat out an internal candidate. And so it was uncomfortable at the beginning, but I sat with him and I said, okay, what is it that you want to do? He wanted to be a principal. So I felt my job was to put him in situations where he would have that responsibility so that the school committee could see him in a different way, which they hadn't seen him, and the superintendent. And so we did that for over a couple of years. We did that, and then when I left that district, they didn't even do a search, they appointed him. I thought that was important. So when I say, surround yourself with those people, but also find out what their goals are. And then let them do their job. I mean, these are professional people. I mean, will there be people that you put in that you realize you have to work with that are struggling? Yes. And I have no problem doing that. But I think let them do their job, support them, cheer them on, encourage them, and then when I need to, step in, if I do. But I think it's a team. I am very much a team person. I coached for a number of years. I believe in that wholeheartedly. But I think you have to build up your team to make sure that they feel comfortable taking that role on. And I'd be working with some people, and I see some people that have been here for a long time. I need them. They know the district. So I'm not certainly going to come in and be anything that would get in the way of that. That timing thing is scaring me. I see the red on it.
I think you answered part of this, but maybe you can expand on it. How do you view the role of parents in the community in our schools?
Oh, hugely important. Absolutely hugely. I want them at everything. It is getting harder. I mean, you know, we're all in the same situation in the sense you can do as many things as you want in the schools. Parents are getting scarcer and scarcer at coming to events, and it's not because they don't care, but we're all in a rat race in the work world. And long gone are the days where mom stayed at home and could go to events and could go to all your parent conferences. It just doesn't happen. So I think we have to find ways to get the parents involved and maybe at their level of what they're able to do. But they're hugely important, integral. So you just do the best you can to get them.
Thank you.
How would you continue to support the recent configuration of our school district?
I know, it's been very interesting to watch. Certainly had been reading the paper, I hadn't worked in it. I had been, as a principal, a part of a couple of other types of things, but I've been very interested, so actually I'm very intrigued. This is why I want the job. I want to get in and really understand how you guys have done that. I think it's very intriguing, and I have been watching it as you set it up. So I enjoy that. I'm curious to ask, although I can ask this later, but how that integration too of the 7th and 8th grade into the high school has gone, and how they feel, how the schools feel, how the parents feel about that. I know you're still kind of young into this, but I'd be curious to hear how that's gone. Maybe we can get to that later. But so anyway, Beth, I think it's fantastic. I think it's phenomenal. And I know you did it a little bit out of necessity, but you also then took an opportunity at the same time to go somewhere different with it, which is intriguing. So, but I have a lot more info to find out about it. I like it.
So as it relates to our current initiatives that are underway in the district, what's your experience with standard-based report cards and curriculum mapping?
Sure. Curriculum mapping I've done for years as a teacher, as an administrator. No issues with that whatsoever. The standard-based report cards we had implemented, we put them in Plymouth probably 4 or 5 years ago now. It's certainly gone through some. I think the biggest piece is for the parents to understand that an A, what was a B teaching you? And training the parents on how, when that feedback comes back to you as a parent, what does that mean? Because we understood what an A meant when we were in school. Even though it didn't give you really any information, we just knew it was good. but what does that info now mean? How is my child doing? So, how many years have you guys been into, or you haven't started yet?
Standard-based report cards we've been rolling out for the last few
Yeah,
years. It's
that's-
not all the way.
Right,
Six.
exactly. We've gone K through 5 in it, just because our middle schools our 6th grades are in the middle school. But we went K through 5, and it had some rocky starts, but it was more about a non-understanding. It wasn't necessarily that it was a change, that people were okay with that, but getting what that meant. When I see that comment, what does it mean? So it's been training a lot of the parents. But it works well. I don't know that it gets to the upper levels yet. I think that's a bigger bite to chew, and we've been dealing with that too. We're not quite sure we're ready to tackle that. It's a little easier to understand at the elementary level. But so I'm very, very familiar and very comfortable with that.
Following up on that, how would you support and expand our current initiatives like Project-Based Learning at the STEM Academy
Yeah.
and the Project Lead the Way program offerings at our high school within our current financial
Good,
atmosphere?
no, absolutely. We have Project Lead the Way in Plymouth also, through a little bit of our vocational and some other programs. But project-based learning is fantastic. I think it again changes how a parent understands what that is. But I think I think you can get much deeper and richer experiences for kids and an understanding of what they know. And I think that's key. Now, within your budget, that's, I don't know that money, in a sense, has to be allotted to a project base, but what does that mean? What kind of supports and resources do you need that we can shift? I have certainly looked at your budget. I saw this year's budget looks like a lot of minuses, so it's definitely some issues there, but I think together, one of the first things that I would do when I wrote this is to really dig deep into the budget, is to say, where are the resources going? Are there places they could be looked at differently? Who's trying to grab those resources? And if looking at those two programs, what needs to be in those? But I'm a huge fan of both of those, actually. Huge fan. So we're doing a lot of that ourselves. It's a good movement. I think it's retraining in a way that teachers grade and look at work, which has been a shift. A good shift, though.
Recently, the Sturgis Charter Public School was listed as top public school in Massachusetts. With its proximity to Sandwich, a number of our students enter the Sturgis lottery. Similarly, Sandwich is close to Upper Cape Regional Technical School and what it has to offer to students. What initiatives would you support or suggest to make Sandwich High School a top choice for students as well?
I think, like I said earlier, I think there's two parts to it. The first and very easy part, in a sense, is to reach out to the parents who's making those decisions. Why are they... vocational is different. I really do think the vocational is different than the charter school in the sense of why you're sending your child there. So I don't know that I'd spend a whole ton of energy and effort unless that the parents were just going there because they didn't want to be in Sandwich. But vocational component is a beast unto itself, and some kids need to be there, so that's different. But as far as the charter school, 3 of my cousins go to that school. They don't live in Sandwich, but they're very happy with it. And I know it's a good school. It has nothing to do with that. But when you're dealing with your money being taken from that, I think we have to look at, from the parent perspective, why are they making that choice? That's the key. And I have no problems whatsoever calling a parent, trying to have a meeting with them, go to their house, just help us understand. Because if it's something that Sandwich isn't doing, if you talk to 10 parents and they're all saying the exact same thing, that's something I think you have to look at as a committee. Well, maybe we need to work on that. And I don't know that you haven't been doing that. So I don't, but that would be something that would be very easy and quick to do. Some kind of a quick survey, meetings, things like that, if they're willing to talk with you. Because our goal would still be to get them back once they're into a Sturgis, which is very good. It's tough to get them out, I know that. But I think that is the key thing, Nancy, is to understanding why. And then, so that's the quick, easy, quick hitter, right? But then the second part is, once you gather that information, what needs to happen in Sandwich to start changing that? What are the issues? And I don't know what they might be, but they could be. It could be that your curriculum isn't rigorous enough. Let's just use that for an example. Well, then if we hear that consistently, then maybe that's the analysis that has to be done. And I'm just saying that, so I don't please take that as it's happening. It could be that they view their kids are being, maybe every 10 of those parents say their kids were bullied. Use that as an example. Well, if that's the case, then what do we need to be looking at with that at the building level? So I think that's the information gathering and then making changes as you need it. Because it's a big deal, and again, I'm in Cohasset, so get born that happens, and I know they're struggling with that, big time. So.
Our school district, we're just starting to undergo a strategic plan.
Good.
And we're wondering what experience you have with this.
I have done 4 of those in my career. I'm a huge proponent of them. I think I'm not a huge proponent. I've been in, one of the first ones I did, it was one of those where you did it, you spent your time doing it, and then it literally sat on a shelf and did nothing. Well, then it's wasting everybody's time. But I think that's part of the strategic planning that I like is the process, because I think the information that comes out. So we just finished our second one in Plymouth since we've been there. They had never had one. And so you can do it a couple different ways. You can hire a company to come in and do it. You can kind of do it within, and there's no right or wrong to that. It depends on the wishes of the committee. But I think the information you can gather, whether you're surveying the community, you put a number of different people on the committee. Every constituency needs to be represented on that, down to students. We had students on them, we had parents on them, we have community members, school committee obviously, staff, administration. But I think the key then is, once you develop what your overarching district goals are, so as the committee, this is our Holy Bible. What is it that we truly believe in? I think when it's most effective and gets off the shelf is then, okay, this is the umbrella that we're going to focus on. This is what we say is important. Now, schools, all of your school improvement plans need to have that as that overarching. So what are the tenets of that you're going to take? And then it's constantly talked about, and I think that is huge. We have spent an awful lot of time in Plymouth dealing with that and addressing that. So for example, under technology, because we had made that one a big piece of ours, we have made a huge change in the past 8 years in our technology. But because it's something that was so important to us, we said it was, and we lived it every meeting. We talk about how does this come about? And when the principals sit and talk about their school improvement plans, they say how this attaches to the strategic plan. So I saw that go on. But it's such a cool thing. No, you did good. But I was really at the end too. So but I could talk forever on strategic plans. I love it.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, you've also recently completed a comprehensive review of our facilities capital needs. And with that in mind, what experiences do you have with the establishment and implementation of a capital improvement plan?
Well, in the sense that through our budget process, we have a director of facilities in our district, and he's part of our budgeting plan. He does the capital improvements for us. So what we do is, as our team, each of the principals then will give and submit to our director of facilities what their requests are, and he prioritizes himself. He goes around and he'll check it out, but he works with central office in that, and then they make a determination, and then through the town. I'm assuming yours is the same in the sense it goes through the town allots. And we decide what we can do within our own budget versus what has to, Sean, go to the town, and we prioritize that way. So pretty comfortable with that.
Sure, thank you.
But I know your director of facilities has a lot of drivers and leaving. So
Yes.
that's like,
Yes.
yes.
What role does professional development for teachers play in the success of a school district?
So huge, huge. I think, especially in this day and age where so many changes have been happening in education and so many, let's face it, mandates and demands on teachers, I think they need time, and there's more and more being requested of them, required of them, and requested. I think professional development is huge. They need the time to sit with each other. They need the time to be trained on some of these things, which they don't always get. So I think one of the things that I would like to look at is how do you design professional development within your buildings, within your district, and really take a look at that. You know, is there a way some outside person can say, oh, we could make it better here. You know, it might be pretty good, but could we make it even better and provide them more opportunities to sit with each other and to get trained on so many things. There's so much going on for poor teachers. So that, I think it's hugely important, huge. But I think it can be done well. There's never enough time. Teachers will always tell you there's never enough time for PD. They always want more, which I can understand and appreciate. But technology in itself could last an entire year of professional development. I know you have a one-to-one, I know all of your teachers. I'm going to guess you've spent some time doing professional development with them. So there's that, but is that at the risk of doing other training on PARC and MCAS and all those kinds of things? So there's never enough time.
So this question is a little different. Tell us about a decision that didn't go according to plan, and what you learned from that process.
Here's a good one. When I first got to Plymouth, it's the first one that hit my mind, I know there's others, believe me. When I first got to Plymouth, I walked into the middle of, we have 2 high schools, which is unusual unto itself. But the 2 high schools were in the middle of looking at their high school schedule. They were in a very traditional 7-period day that was not effective, and they knew it. But when I walked into, so I was part of this plan in a sense, but it was also, I was at the very end when it just bombed. What I walked into was, for some reason, they were under the impression that they could have 2 different schedules, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know where they got that impression, but neither here nor there. So what happened was they went off on their own and created their own committees and did all that, and they came up with 2 schedules. Well, so my job at that point was to bring them all together. I just got there. Bring them all together and let's change our high school schedule. Once they learned that it had to be the same. So how do you think that went? When Building A had this schedule and Building B had this schedule, it was an absolute bomb. We went into the Division of Labor because it was fighting amongst it. It was just awful. But it was done the wrong way. Not to blame anybody. It just started wrong and went down a path that was bad. And then there were some bad feelings that went back and forth between, one side thought the other principal controlled more of it. It was just nasty, actually. It got very nasty. So we went into the division of the Department of Labor, and they orchestrated us to kind of go back to our way we were doing it for a little while and then revisit. So it took us literally about 3 or 4 years to recover from that. So then what I did 2 years ago, I brought a committee together with the understanding that it was one schedule. We did one committee, and actually we changed our schedule this year as our first year, and it went beautifully. I think it's just the way it was done. I think that is a good example of just showing something can go. They were trying to do the exact same thing, but it's how it was done from the beginning, and it wasn't well thought out. And I think that was part of the problem. So I think that's key to a learning lesson. You need to know what are your end game, what's your end game that you're trying to get at, and how do you get there. And try not to work in a school with 2 high schools. It's 2 high performing and very good principals that are very strong. So it's an interesting thing. I respect them intensely, but wow, they're always competing.
And so for our final question, we're going to end on
Final.
a positive note. What is an accomplishment you're most proud of in which your leadership was transformative?
I would say one of the things that I'm very proud of that I've done in 2 different high schools is all schools deal with students that are struggling. And we all have mechanisms to deal with some of those. You might have some kind of an alternative program during the day, you might have something at night. In Whitney Hanson, when I was a principal there, we did 2 things. One, we had a day program, and then we had an evening program. And what we struggled in the day program, for those of you that know where Whitney Hanson is at all, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, really. There's no, so for kids that need to have a component of work in their day, for example, is to feel that enrichment themselves. So what we did was we took that program and we moved it downtown. We rented a space. I found somebody, actually the president of our alumni association, who gave us a ridiculously low rate on a building he owned. And we changed the mentality of that whole entire program. And it helped the kids because it let them not feel like they were the dregs of society in a sense. And that's what they sometimes felt like, because the regular ed kids were just, they struggled with them, and it just wasn't working. It just, nothing good was happening from it. So I was very proud when we moved it there and let them have a school to work component, because now they could walk to jobs. It was fantastic. And they did a lot of community service within that, which I think was huge. And then what we did with the night program was, and this hadn't been done yet, was, again, same kind of mentality in the sense that the students that, when we were tuitioning from out of town and everything, but they really weren't their own entity. So when they had to take MCAS, they'd have to come during the day. And part of the reasons these students went to school at night was they had to work during the day to help support their families. So what we did was we applied to the Department of Education and we created its own school. So we actually created the Whitney Hanson Alternative Education High School. And they got to take MCAS at night. It was its own entity, and I was very, very proud of that. I used to go to the graduation. It was awesome, and these are kids that might not have made it, and to watch them and their parents be that proud, because they might not have ever got there, ever, during the traditional day program, because the way we do things in the traditional isn't meant for every kid. And I think that, and so when I went to Franklin, we did the exact same thing with an alternative program that was also struggling within the building, moved it downtown, and it changed everything. So pretty proud of that. I am. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can say, but I think with our neediest population, I think that was something I'm very proud of.
So that ends this portion of the individual questions. And now, if you could give your closing remarks, and if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer.
Should I do, which one should I do first?
Whatever.
Okay. Let me ask you guys a couple of questions first, because that might kind of help drive the closing remarks. One of the things that I wanted to ask each of you, I'm putting you on the spot now. Tell me one thing that you're most proud of in Sandwich, and then one area that you think you need work on from each of you.
You can go first. Yeah, I think I'm most proud of the programs that we offer, K through 12. Understanding my first year in the school committee, and really like understanding all of this after a year, I think it's unbelievable.
That's good.
I've grown to respect the offering that we have tremendously. One thing I think that we need to do a better job of is planning and communicating better with the town.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I think we could do a better job there.
I'd say one thing that I've most proud of, just learned from doing this as well, is the commitment I see.
Okay.
Be it from the teachers, be it from the administration. I really didn't know what went into it until I got involved in the school committee.
That's what happens.
So yeah, it's without a doubt, the commitment is the biggest thing I've seen for the most part. And probably to echo Jay's word, I think it's no secret that having that commitment translate to other people so they can communicate with other people and can see that as well.
Makes sense. Yes,
one thing that I'm finishing my first year here too, and one thing I really appreciate is the collaborative efforts
Okay.
of a lot of stakeholders. Being, with teachers and students and parents and community members, but that also leads into an opportunity to expand that,
Okay.
especially as it relates to the budget process and being able to, not only defend, but make a case for why this makes sense in our whole community.
Okay, I like that.
I think one of the things that I've enjoyed watching as I finished my second year here in the committee is with the reconfiguration. It was I don't want to call it chaos, but there was
You had a lot of changes.
There were a lot of changes, and people had very strong opinions on either side. And what I've loved is the commitment and dedication of everyone that came together. And they said, you know what, we need to make this work, and we're going to make it work as great as we can. Again, I share the same, the communication is something that it can always be better.
Go ahead. All right. I'm just finishing my 6th year, and I guess I would say the teachers, the dedication of the teachers that work so directly, and because of the reconfiguration, they're the ones that made it work. So I know there was a lot of frustration with them, and there probably still is. So
Change.
if there needs to be, continued support of the teachers, and I'm not sure how we can do that, but I think that's part of our job. And what could we do better? I agree about communication. I mean, it can always be better.
Always.
Amongst ourselves and with the town.
Since I get to go last, can I say all of the above? Honestly, for me, what I'm most proud of is really all of the above. The community in which we live in, even the changes, the reconfiguration, and all the changes that we've had over the last couple of years. There were many conversations where people weren't happy about the direction it was going, but ultimately, at the end of the day, these are the changes that were decided, and here we are, and people are continuing to work forward. So I think it's all of it. It's for me, as a community, the most part of our community, but again, it is that communication. And not only is it the communication with our stakeholders, it's the communication with the community, but it's two ways. So if there are times, if we're asking for community input, then we have to listen to it and use it, not just ask for it. And as you said with your strategic plan, just don't put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
So then try to take the communication that we are receiving and implement it in the ways that allow us implement it in the structure of what we do as a school
Yeah,
committee
that
and
makes
as a
sense.
district, and not just say, okay, here it is, go.
No, that makes sense. So, all right, so now I feel much more comfortable closing because, so if you take one of those, and I gave an extra one to the committee member that wasn't here.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I've done, and again, through my research for you, and I think this is, I'm glad I actually listened to your comments first, because one of the things that I like to do, I'm very type A in a sense of that, is laying out a plan and is, what would I do? And so, and I don't need to read through the entire thing for you, so certainly you can take that, but I think you will see on here, between now and even first day of school, communication is huge. Meeting with, right in the middle you see at the top there, how do I stop that communication tree? And I think that is huge. You need to be approachable, you need to be open to conversation. I think that begins conversation and communication with people. That you can't have that impact of a closed door mentality. I always use the story of when I went to Franklin High School, my administrative assistant, and I'm not sure who exactly she had beforehand, but I always said to the staff, I have an open door policy. And she couldn't, I think she struggled with that because her job was the gatekeeper, right, to stop everybody. And so it was about midway through the first year, people were coming in, and she's like, go ahead, she's got an open door policy, because I would just tell everyone, come on in, talk, what are we doing? But she was struggling with that. What do you mean? Go ahead, go ahead. So it was just, so I think that's the mentality in my personality. So I think that begins this communication piece, is that approachability and understanding that I will listen, and I'll hear it. I am reflective in the sense that I want to hear 6 people's opinions and then, okay, digest. Now what do we need to do? But I think it's important. It's important not to say, Jay comes to talk to me and we just, boom, let's go do it. Not that what he's saying is not important, but it's important to know, does everyone else buy into that? And we back to that teamwork that we talked about. I think that is huge. It's my personality. You don't know that yet, but I hope if I'm a top candidate, you find that out. And I think through the people that you will talk with, you will find that out. One of the people, and I think a key person in that, which I did put in, and I have a letter from, because you only asked for 3, and I didn't want to overdo it, and I hadn't totally made public at the beginning that I was going, is I also had a letter from our union president, and I think that letter itself will speak to that collaborative nature. When I first got to Plymouth, it was a very rocky relationship with the union, very rocky. Spent a lot of time in the Department of Labor Relations. That has significantly changed, and I think the letter that I certainly could share with you would be testament to that. And she and I just talked yesterday about it and how much it's changed, and I think that's important, that they know that they can come and we can work it out. You can always work it out. You don't have to go through all kinds of legal measures to do it. You talk, and let's figure out what the situation is and then we can go from there. So quickly is why sandwich, like I said in the letter, and I said it at my opening. The time is good for me. It's an opportunity for me. You're a very good school district. I know you've been having some ups and downs, but you're a good school district at its core. You've got great things going on here. I want to be a part of that. I like the fact, for me, one of the key things for me is living local. I'm very much an active participant in everything going on. If I had gotten Pembroke, I was moving up to Pembroke. That was happening. Moving off Cape, but it was that important to me. It was that important to me because, for me, 15 minutes away, I could run home, get on the treadmill, shower, and come back to an event at 7 o'clock like it's nothing. And that is important to me. I was like that as a high school principal, and I do that now, and that is huge for me. So I'm a present person, and I'm a collaborative person. So you have a tough decision. I know the candidates. I know all but one of them there. So I get it. You have a very tough decision. You have to do what's right for you. Clearly, I want it to be. But I understand. So I will respect whatever decision, but I think that's important. And I think I can bring a lot to your district. I really do. Again, I've watched a number of your meetings. I've been around the area long enough. I think I can fill the things that you need. I truly believe that. So that's where we're at.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
We are going to make our final decision on Wednesday, so
You're still sticking with that
if
time?
I could get a contact number.
You have on my resume, that is my cell phone and probably the best number. I actually will be leaving tomorrow morning. I'm an assistant chair of a NEASC accreditation visit. So Nancy, if you call, if I don't answer right away, don't take it personally. I'm just probably, and you know how NEASC goes. Actually, you guys have just gone through it recently. But I will step right out as soon as I possibly can and return a phone call. So I'll be there until Wednesday. But if there's any other questions you even have. Sound good? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much.
Good question.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I know it was such a long trip to get here, so.
Thank you very much.
I know. It was like Google it.
Take care, good to see you.
It's not as good a idea as they have, but you can certainly have it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's the only one I don't have a whole long email. So call me not anytime. Yes, yeah, sure.
Yeah.